Convenience is a state of mind of compliance to God's commandments. Grace and peace, everybody. Part 3 of this 5-part series, Excuses to Avoid God's Call. One of them is inconvenience. And rather than focus on inconvenience, let's look at what the Bible uses. This literal word of convenience, I think, will give us some insight as to how we can experience the transition. Not that everything God will then call us to will be convenient, but rather the adjustment in you and I will take place because we become compliant to God's call or commandment. That compliance, or the antithesis or the opposite of this compliance, is seen in Romans chapter 1, 27 to 28. Now remember, Romans chapter 1 and 2 primarily focusing on who we are apart from God and who we are outside of relationship to Him and disconnected from the gospel, Jesus Christ. How are we described? We're described here in verse 27 as likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet. Even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, in what they knew, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, and this reprobate mind leads to what? To do those things which are not convenient. If you will, a reprobate mind leads us to a life of inconvenience, a life that is no longer compatible to God's design or plan. We don't have to look far in today's world to see that. But quite honestly, after sin, we've never had to look far. We could even start just by looking in the mirror, because everything about us now after sin becomes an antithesis to what God actually willed us to be, which was the extension of His love, to be loved on eternally and to reflect His image, made in His image. That was His intent. But sin changes that. But what grace and what redemption do is that it restores what was broken. And so now we go from an inconvenient reality to a convenient reality. And that's no change on God's part, other than getting us and waiting for us to come to Him and Him getting us. But as far as what God expects and what He designs, that's never changed or altered. So clearly the change and the altering happens on our end. This is the purpose of redemption, and this is the purpose of sanctification, to redesign us, to restore us into His mind. So when we find ourselves inconvenienced, overly inconvenienced, once we understand what His mind and what His will is, there's got to be a switch on our end. And it's why in Romans 1:18, when it describes the inconvenience or those people, us doing things that are not convenient or in God's commands, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. When we become anti-truth, we become anti-life, anti-way. And if you look at everything that in this world now is against God, on some level, it's anti-truth or it's anti-life, because God is the source of life and God is the source of truth. And this inconvenience now that we might find ourselves in, once we know what God's called us to do, but it's just too big of a struggle, that's like a pain signal. It's letting us know that our lives, the body of our life in some way is maladjusted. It's out of compliance. It's out of design. And that's the alert to us to change, not God. And it's why when you go and keep reading in Romans 1:21, it talks about those who are inconvenient when it comes to God, out of compliance, because that when they knew God, they glorified Him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. That's deep. It doesn't say they had a good heart that was darkened. It says their foolish heart. Naturally, apart from God, we've got foolish hearts. That's why it's crazy to think that in order to find what we should do in our life, listen to our heart. That's not biblical. It's not biblical. It's not sane. And it's inconsistent with the promise of God, who He said, I'll show you the way. I'm the designer. I'm the one who made you. I think I know better, not just than anybody. I know even better than you what you should be doing. So convenience, God's desire, is that we would be compatible with the design. And we can't fix that on our own any more than a broken toaster can fix itself, or a broken car can fix itself. A broken man can't fix a broken man, and a broken woman can't fix a broken woman, or vice versa. We need the designer. Even better, we need a deliverer. And what God has promised, that if we accept redemption extended to us through the blood of Christ, He, through the power of His Spirit, will live and work in us to realign us, if you will, make us convenient to what once was inconvenient. And then the thing that was convenient to our nature, to the flesh, that stuff starts to become inconvenient. That becomes the things that's a challenge to deal with. Sin used to be our friend, now becomes our foe. And righteousness, which used to be an annoyance, it becomes our attitude and our all. We look for it because that's who we are, not just what we do.